We are now on Module 11, Updates and Patch Management. In this module, we will discuss updates, and we will discuss the VMware vSphere Update Manager. The Update Manager is used to download updates from VMware. We will install Update Manager, and then we will use Update Manager to scan an ESXi host and then to remediate an ESXi host. And when they say remediate, they mean to apply the updates. Now, I think everybody knows what an update is. It's certainly in Windows. As you know, in Windows 7, you can configure a Windows 7 machine to grab its updates from Microsoft every day at 3 in the morning. That's Windows updates. But we are talking about vSphere updates, updates to the ESXi hosts and to the virtual machines. Updates include patches, meaning a fix to an error in the code, security patches, improvements, drivers, and new features. Applying updates. You can apply updates manually, one ESXi host at a time, and if you only have one or two ESXi hosts, it's not so bad. But if you have a large data center with a large number of ESXi hosts, to patch and update those ESXi hosts one at a time can be awfully labor intensive and time consuming. This is why we have the vSphere Update Manager. The vSphere Update Manager is a centralized, automated application. It downloads the updates from VMware, and then it applies those updates to the ESXi hosts and to the virtual machines. Here's a diagram that shows the components of the Update Manager. Here is the vSphere client where you or I, as a network administrator, would stand. And the vSphere Update Manager is a separate virtual machine that pulls the updates off of VMware's cloud servers and then pushes the updates down to our ESXi hosts. Let's do a review of the meaning of maintenance mode and what it means to migrate or vMotion a virtual machine. Maintenance mode. During the update process, the host goes into maintenance mode. And in maintenance mode, virtual machines running on that host are not available. So the question is, how does a virtual machine remain available when the host that it is running on is being updated? And the answer is, it is migrated to another ESXi host using vMotion. Let's look at how maintenance mode settings work. To eliminate downtime for virtual machines when patching ESXi hosts, we have 4 steps here. So step number 1, the Update Manager puts the ESXi host, which is going to be updated, into maintenance mode. That's step 1. And then step 2, the virtual machines are migrated to another ESXi host, so they will still be available to the users. And then step 3, the Update Manager applies the patches to the ESXi host, and then the virtual machines are moved back to the ESXi host. The advantage of this is that when the ESXi host goes into maintenance mode, then the virtual machines are still accessible to the users, and that's because they have been migrated to another ESXi host using vMotion. Now let's look at installing Update Manager. Update Manager is typically installed on a Windows Server 64-bit, which is running on a virtual machine, which is running on an ESXi host. You could install it on a separate box if you wanted to, but typically it's installed on a virtual machine which is running on an ESXi host. And it is installed from the same DVD that you use to install vCenter Server. So let me go to a copy of Windows Server, which is running on a virtual machine, and initiate the install program on the vCenter Server DVD. This is a Windows Server running on a virtual machine, and I put in the vCenter Server install DVD, and I'm not going to install vCenter Server. I'm going to go down here and select vSphere Update Manager. vSphere Update Manager is a Windows-based program that enables centralized, automated patch and version management. So I click on Install. And then it says, welcome to the Install Shield Wizard for VMware vSphere Update Manager. I click on Next. I accept the licensing agreement, and then it says, please provide the necessary information about the vCenter Server. Now remember, this is controlled by vCenter Server. So what we do is we link this to the vCenter Server. So we type in the IP address of the vCenter Server, and then the administrator name and the administrator password of the vCenter Server. Then click on Next. Then we select Install a Microsoft SQL 2008 R2 Express instance of a database. This is the database where all the updates will be installed. And this is used for small scale deployments. For a large scale deployment, I could use an external database, but we will use the one that's already built in, and it's a lot easier to configure. We click on Next. Click Install to begin the installation. And then it installs the Update Manager. And now we can see the Install Shield Wizard has successfully installed VMware vSphere Update Manager. Now that we've installed it, let's now configure Update Manager. I go to my vSphere client, and under Cluster Settings, I select the tab which says Update Manager. And then on the bottom left, you will see a new item has been added under Solutions and Applications that says Update Manager. I click on Update Manager, and we can see that vSphere Update Manager enables you to easily apply patches or upgrades to virtual machines, virtual appliances, or even ESXi hosts. And there are 5 steps in the process. Download the patches and upgrades, create and attach the baselines, and a baseline is a set of patches and upgrades against which the compliance of a host or virtual machine is assessed. We create the baselines, then we scan the inventory, then we review the compliance, and if it's not compliant, then we remediate, which is another word for applying the patches and updates. So we click on the tab for configuration, and these are the 7 different parameters that we have to configure. In the first parameter, it says Update Manager Patch Store used by ESXi and ESXi host. In other words, where are these updates going to be downloaded to? And this is where we type the IP address of our update server. Then under download settings, we specify where the downloads will be downloaded from, where the updates will be downloaded from, and of course that will be from VMware. Under the download schedule, we can edit the download schedule, and we can see that we can configure the system to automatically download the updates every day at 11 p.m. if we want. And then under the notification check schedule, we can configure the Update Manager every hour to check with VMware just to see if there are any emergency updates that should be immediately installed. Under virtual machine settings, an update might screw things up. So it's a good idea to take a snapshot before we apply the update, just in case we need to roll it back. But snapshots can take a lot of space, so we will select keep snapshot for 24 hours, and then it will delete that snapshot. Under ESXi host/cluster settings, we see under maintenance mode settings, which we previously discussed, before remediation, ESXi host might need to enter maintenance mode. And when an ESXi host is in maintenance mode, then no virtual machines can be running on it. So if we want those virtual machines to remain available to the users, we use vMotion to automatically migrate those virtual machines to another ESXi host. So under virtual machine power state, we select the drop-down. And we could select power off any running virtual machines which are on this ESXi host, but we're going to select do not change virtual machine power state. And what that really means is vMotion that running virtual machine to another ESXi host, so it will still be available to the users. So that is what we will select. We will select the checkbox that says temporarily disable any removable devices such as USB drive or DVD that might prevent a host from entering maintenance mode. We typically will select retry entering maintenance mode in case of failure, and we select the retry delay as 5 minutes and the number of retries is 3. And then let's scroll down to look at cluster settings. Certain features might need to be temporarily disabled for cluster updates to succeed. These features will be automatically re-enabled when remediation is complete. Next line. Update Manager does not remediate hosts on which the following features are enabled. So we will temporarily disable distributed power management. We will temporarily disable high availability emission control, and we will temporarily disable fault tolerance. Note, to enable that fault tolerance can be re-enabled, you should remediate all fault tolerant hosts with the same updates at the same time. We will not select the checkbox that says enable parallel remediation. We will use sequential, one host after the other. And we will not select the checkbox that says migrate powered off virtual machines. No need to do that. I mean, when they're powered on, certainly we want to migrate them, but not powered off. And we will not select the checkbox that says Pixie booted ESXi hosts because we're not using Pixie boot. The next setting to look at is vApp settings, enabling smart reboots selectively reboots the virtual appliances in the vApp to maintain startup dependencies and possibly reboots the applications that are not remediated. So we definitely select that checkbox. So these are our 7 configuration variables, and after installing and then configuring the Update Manager, the next thing to do is to use Update Manager to scan the hosts to identify which hosts require the updates, and then to remediate, which really means to apply the updates. So I go to my vSphere client, and under the tab that says Update Manager, I click that tab, and right now we don't have any baselines or any ESXi hosts. So under attached baseline groups, and remember baseline is just a group of patches, we right click attached baseline groups and select attach. And then we select the baselines that we downloaded from VMware when we installed this, and we select critical host patches and non-critical host patches, pre-defined, already downloaded from VMware. We click on attach. Now we see here are our 3 ESXi hosts. So the question is, which one of these are up to date and which ones are not up to date? So to determine whether or not they are up to date, we click on scan. We click on scan and we select patches and extensions as well as upgrades. We click on scan, and now we can see that all 3 of these ESXi hosts are not up to date. So we got to apply the patches. To apply the patches, on the bottom right hand corner we select the button that says remediate. Click on remediate and it says which ones do you want to remediate. In this example, I will just remediate this one ESXi host, the one ended in 64. Then I click on next. I specify which patches I want to apply, and I want to apply all the patches which have been downloaded by default from VMware. Click on next. Then what I could do is I could apply these patches right now. This is called remediate immediately. Or I could configure the patches to apply at another time at a future date, for example. But I would like these patches to be applied right now. So I click on next, and then it's asking me to confirm what we want to have happen to virtual machines that are currently running. And when we select do not change virtual machine power state, what that really means is use vMotion to move those running virtual machines to other ESXi hosts so they'll still be available to users. Now, if you don't care whether or not the virtual machines are unavailable to users for the amount of time that it takes for remediation to occur, then you could just select power off virtual machines. But I select do not change virtual machine power state because that will vMotion those virtual machines to other ESXi hosts. I select retry entering maintenance mode in case of failure. I do not select the checkbox for Pixie Boot because we're not using Pixie Boot, followed by next. And then, just to confirm, we will disable distributed power management because it must be disabled for update. We disable fault tolerance, and we temporarily disable high availability, and of course after remediation is over, these features will be automatically turned back on. I will not select parallel remediation, I will leave it at sequential, and I will not migrate powered off virtual machines. Before we do it, let's just click on a generate a report to see if there are any problems. And I click on generate a report, and the only thing it says is that EVC enhanced vSphere compatibility is disabled, and you only need EVC if you have ESXi hosts which have different types of microprocessors. Since all of these ESXi hosts are identical, we don't need EVC enabled. So I click on next, and then to apply the patches I click on finish, and there we can see that the patches have been applied to the ESXi host number 64, and that ESXi host is now fully compliant, meaning that the patches have been applied. Now this 33% means of our 3 ESXi hosts, only one of them has been brought up to compliance. The two others are not compliant. So the next thing I might want to do is to repeat the remediation process, but check off all 3 ESXi hosts. vSphere Update Manager. vSphere Update Manager downloads updates from VMware. It scans hosts for compliance, and it applies the updates to the ESXi hosts, meaning it performs remediation. And this concludes our section on the vSphere Update Manager.